My name is Ed Schaller, and I'm doing the MIT case study on Nintendo's Revolution. So that's actually kind of has two meanings there. So it's the way Nintendo kind of shifted their culture around the mid 2000s, and it was also the code name for one of the, you can call it, secret projects they were working on in the mid 2000s to try and bring them back to prominence. So Nintendo was created by Fusahiro Yamauchi in 1889. It was originally, they sold playing cards, so they would decorate the playing cards, and sell them. In the 1950s, they had a deal with Disney, which really brought them a lot of business, really rose them up to prominence. They were allowed to put Disney characters on these cards, so that was really their main business for almost 100 years. In the 1970s, they began to get into toys, and they toyed around a little bit with robotics, which kind of led them to their foray into video games in the 1980s with the Mr. Game & Watch. So from that point on, Nintendo was the big player in the video game industry. They had a 77% market share by 1980, and they really dominated as they saw companies like Atari and Sega kind of fall out of the market. Uh, but at this time also, Sony and Microsoft started to get involved and began to take away that market share from Nintendo. The other thing with the video game industry, it had exploded by this point. So by 2002, 60% of people over the age of 6 had said they had played video games before, and 221 million copies of video games, just software in general, was sold that year. So this had become a massive industry when Nintendo had been in and they had experience up to this point. Okay, so here we're going to take a look at a SWOT analysis to further establish the point of what Nintendo's revolution was. So two strengths of Nintendo is their culture and innovation. So under President Fusahiro Yamauchi, he was a member of the founding family. Nintendo was known as a risk-taking company, which is very odd for a Japanese company at that time. So they were aggressive, they made decisions quickly, and it really led to an innovative kind of culture. So they were always, on the cutting edge of technology and willing to take risks that a lot of companies weren't, which kind of left them as the main player in the video game industry up until about the mid 2000s. So then along came a new CEO, Shigeru Iwata, and he built upon this culture. He became very into the process of things, and communication became a key component of Nintendo's culture and really what the company wanted to do. Um, that did get them, pretty far, but there were some weaknesses with Nintendo. So the release of the GameCube in the early 2000s was essentially a flop for Nintendo. So it sold 44% less than they were expecting, and it really left them with only 12% of the market share in the gaming industry, way down from the highs in the 70s and 80s. So it kind of goes hand in hand with the threats. One of the weaknesses, they weren't willing to kind of go all in how Microsoft and Sony had done with graphics, technology, and performance. They relied more so on their software and individual titles. So that kind of held them back a little bit. Almost they were blinded by their success in a way. So that was kind of a weakness that they would have to build upon. It goes hand in hand with the threat of Sony and Microsoft. So the PlayStation 2 is actually the most or the best-selling console of all time. So really, it took most of the market share away from Nintendo. And Microsoft's Xbox was also another dominant player, taking about another 22 to 25% of the market share, depending on what you look at. So that kind of left Nintendo looking for an opportunity to get back into the gaming industry. So they were a well-respected company. They had a strong customer base. And this new console, the codename the Revolution, was really their way to get back into the space. So what they really wanted to do was they wanted to find that balance between their existing fans and new fans. Really, they were going after young children and mothers. They wanted it to be a family-friendly entertainment system. So finally, Nintendo's Revolution. As I alluded to before, they were able to find that balance between their existing customer base and that family-centric consumer base they were looking to get into. And the Wii, the Revolution, wound up being a massive success. Nintendo was able to sell over 100 million of these units. It was released to critical acclaim, and it really won over that customer base they were looking for, and their existing customer base loved it. With that being said, I thank you for listening to my presentation.